start. And that should be it recorded now. We have 8 UMIPs up for consideration this week. We did have 9. One of them, the iFARM one, was an accidental resubmission. So we don't have to consider that one.
I also wanted to, the Omnibus one, I think we're going to punt also. I'm going to do some more work on that and resubmit along with price identifier Omnibus to go along with it. So we can skip that.
Ah, super. That's great. So we only have 7. Ah, fantastic. The first one we've got is the variable expiring multi-party from the pre-launch. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, this was quite a technical UMIP. It had been reviewed before and we were waiting for a code review and the contract to be deployed. John, do you know where that's at?
My understanding is that we're just waiting on the contract deployment to make sure that it's matching what we discussed. But I think we covered all of the code changes that were going to happen and all got on the same page there. Sean, was there anything else with that besides deployment and checking the code there?
No, I don't think so. I think just deployment, and then because like to actually vote on this, we need to have the contract factory address. So that's why we need to wait on deployment. And I think that's something that just needs to be handled outside of the UMIP process. But like if they do deploy, I think it's good to go. I know there were some issues with like UMIP formatting and stuff like that, but I think like generally we've reviewed the code and people seem happy with it.
Okay, so the expiring multi-party 248 is a go with contingencies again, and the contingencies really haven't changed. Yeah?
Yep,
so
I think so.
Deploy the code before Thursday, we can do that. Go with contingencies, waiting for deployment. Okay, now the next one was the UMIP. I don't know quite how you would say that. But this is an update to the VTI one that was in before. Oh, hang on, I think that one might be it. Okay, so this was originally submitted by as tracking VTI, but it's been updated to track another index. What we seem to be missing there was the implementation feed. Or implementation steps, rather.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's just some missing content, but this is very similar to like the USDC UMIP, where it's self-referential, and then at expiry changes to use a price from Google Finance, which doesn't fit into the bot price feeds, but that's okay because it's just a one-off request.
Okay, but just to clarify, this wouldn't be like taking and splitting it in 2 price identifiers, which are like switched based on the timestamp, or
no.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the best way to go about this, but it's also dependent on building a price feed that can get like stock price information, which, you know, is kind of depending on the proposer's timeline and capabilities, I guess.
So for that one, I mean, we need implementation steps actually written into the UMIP. Is that something that can be done by Thursday, do we think?
I think so, yeah.
Go with contingencies?
Rainis, do you have any issues with that?
No, I think it's perfectly fine. But so do I understand correctly? There's no need for additional configuration for price feed implementation then?
So we would need the Uniswap price feed implementation, right? But that's dependent on the synthetic token that it's deployed with. So it's impossible to add like the actual price feed implementation in right now. But I think you or Anu or somebody left a comment asking for just a default price feed config with a placeholder address. Yeah, but for the expiry price, there wouldn't actually be a price feed configuration.
Okay, but apart from this, I think it looks good.
Okay, so go with contingencies. Now, the next two have been withdrawn, the iFARM and the Omnibus. So we can move straight to the yvUSDC here. That one seemed fine apart from a generic issue with liquidations. But that's really something that kind of applies to all non-traded tokens. And I saw that they left a comment basically saying that you could get it by depositing into the vault. Are we happy with this, the collateral?
I think that I am. It would be cool to see some added content around how you would get it by depositing into the vault. Like if there's multiple ways to get liquidity for a liquidation, just to outline it, but that's also a general thing.
They did add in one way, but as far as I know, that is the only way. That is how you get the token, is by depositing into the vault. I don't think there's anywhere else that you can get it.
Okay. I think that's fine then.
Are we good to go with that one?
How does this generate yield? It's just the value that the yvUSDC is redeemable for goes up, right?
Yes, as far as I know.
Yeah, vault strategies, I think, for investing the USDC.
Gotcha.
So whatever they're able to get.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think they move it between different providers, depending on which is the best yield. So
I just meant they weren't like changing the number of yvUSDC that's held.
No, there's no rebasing involved, as far as I know. So we'll go on pull request 285. Everyone happy with that?
Yeah, I think so.
I'll take the silence as a yes. The next one was UST as a whitelisted collateral currency. Oh no, that's a different one. Sorry. The only comment here was that they mentioned that they had updated the 3 markets, because they have actually specified where you should get the value of 1 UST from. But I think that might be a bit problematic, given that liquidity can shift about, and it's probably best just to have it as a kind of generic market price. They did say they changed it, but the security section still refers to the 3 markets. How are people feeling about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like in the collateral UMIP, I just think the language needs to be softened some. Like I think it's good that they're noting that, you know, this can deviate from PEG, so contract deployers should be aware of that. But like they can recommend a few markets, but like this shouldn't be taken as like the canonical implementation, right? Because that should all be in any sort of price identifier that wants to account for the UST price.
Apart from that, are there any other concerns about this UMIP?
Nope.
Okay, is that a go with contingencies?
I mean, I think it's just like one sentence, right? So
yeah, it's just, I think it's the last sentence in the whole thing. So it's not a particularly serious change. The next one was 287, which was to add various fiats with UMA. This looked good. I noticed, Rainis, you commented about adding in references to UMIP 57. And there's also UMIP 29 and 90, I think, that had the fiat USD prices for these, which Sean and I suggested that they added in. Any other issues around UMIP and pull request 287? Oh, yeah,
Raina.
there was, sorry, there was also missing links to bots.
yeah, I don't think those really need to be blockers though, because like they were just referencing their own bots, which really don't have anything to do with the price identifiers. But probably good to complete the missing information for sure.
Do we want to make that a contingency or just a suggestion?
I mean, they said they were adding it in, but yeah, it's debatable if you even need that information, but it doesn't really harm anything, I don't think.
Okay, and do we need the references to UMIP 90 and UMIP 29? Is this just a straight go as is, or do we need those added in?
Yeah, I think it should reference the other UMIPs that have already had the, you know, we already reviewed those implementations and voted them in. So I think it's good to reference those. Rainis, I think you reviewed this one.
Yes, and I think absolutely it makes more sense to reference something which is already approved. So wherever it's possible, unless there are like some specific reasons to do it differently.
Awesome.
Excellent. Okay, the next two, the last two are technical ones, and I'm going to hand over to John to talk to these because I haven't really looked at these. The first one was a self-minting derivative factory as casework. John?
Yeah, and I think the both are pretty related to each other. And I'm curious if anybody from Jarvis is on the call, because I think it would be really cool if somebody could talk through what these are meant to be doing, and then we could get into the technical questions on it since we have a good amount of time.
I don't think anybody from Jarvis is on the call.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in that case, I think these are pretty similar in their fee payer logic to contracts that we've already approved. that have been audited. So one of the concerns that we would have with a new contract creator is that it would be able to spam the DVM by not paying final fees, but it looks pretty much the same. It'd be cool to just touch base and confirm that that's the case, if there's anything else that we need to look at there. It is a lot to digest, but it seems fairly similar in the way that it interacts with the DVM to contracts we already approved.
So are we good to go with the self-minting derivative factory?
I think so. Maybe just make a note that we should follow up with Jarvis and check that our understanding is correct, because we haven't done, you know, like a full in-depth code review, and it's still waiting to be audited and everything. But it does look similar, and just double check that it is as similar as it seems.
And this is just plugging in, so it's not kind of going into the UMA core contract, so it doesn't need to be audited by OpenZeppelin. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's not going into our core contracts. It's building off of some forked contracts that we're building from our perpetual, and it's extending the functionality a bit more to match some of the goals in their roadmap. But the way that it interacts with the DVM seems pretty much the same. Like there's some fee payer logic. When a dispute goes through, it pays a final fee, etc. So we can just double check.
Cool. Okay, so we can check that, and that is basically a go. And is that the same as the derivative factory as creator, John?
Pretty similar, yeah. They're both extensions of contracts that are already in use that were approved. They do some additional things, but their interaction with the DVM seems to be pretty much the same.
Only thing I was not quite clear regarding what these modifications which are done, what against the version against which these modifications were done. Maybe that could be put a bit more explicitly. At least when I was reading just this part, I was not so clear. Which is like the starting point. Is this starting point is UMA core repository, or it's the prior version of Jarvis, which they already had?
Yeah, and my understanding from reading it is that it's based on the perpetual pool party, which is the previous branching off from the perpetual. So it's 2 steps removed.
Okay, yeah, I just had a comment, just put it more explicitly, so it's clear.
Cool.
One minor thing. I think the perpetual pool party is actually originally derived from the EMP. I don't think that the perpetual, actually, maybe it was pulled from the perpetual. No, you might be right. They might.
No,
they
it was
might
from
have
the EMP.
Is it?
Yeah, it was from the EMP.
Okay.
Oh yeah, because I saw something about when I was reading through the Syntherium manifesto that it removed some funding rate logic, which made me assume that it was based on the perpetual.
Yeah, I actually can't remember. Okay, never mind.
I think they were building. I think they were building it like the exact same time we were building our perpetual. So there were probably like some concepts shared between. But yeah.
Okay, so that one is also a go.
Yeah, but I think we should just add a note here that we should just double check again with them about how it interacts with the DVM, and that it interacts in basically the same way.
Yeah. I think there's a broader question, I think, in the UMA community that, I mean, I just want to mention on the call that we discuss a lot inside UMA, but I think is also relevant to discuss amongst the community. When we approve financial contracts, we are worried primarily about them impacting the UMA system and like damaging the DVM or hurting the token holders in some way. The job of like the UMA community, the primary job of the UMA community is to protect the UMA system, not necessarily to protect the users of financial contracts. So for that reason, like I don't think the UMA community, like the UMA community, obviously, if you notice something that's wrong with the contract and will hurt users, like we want to say something, but I don't think the burden is really on the UMA community to audit these contracts that we're approving for use with the DVM. It's really the burden on like the Jarvis team, for instance, to make sure their contract is not going to, get hacked or lose their users' money. And so for that reason, like I think I've mentioned this internally that like I don't think that these contracts, when developed by third-party developers, should be pulled into the UMA repo. I actually think it makes the most sense for those to be maintained by the core teams that develop them, and let them kind of let it be really, them own it. It should be their project. And then the UMA community can just step in when that piece of infrastructure interacts with the DVM. And I think as we scale out the optimistic Oracle, we might even be in a world fairly soon where we don't even need to have explicit approval of these contracts. These contracts could just kind of launch without us needing to go through any governance at all. But yeah, I just wanted to give like a short spiel on kind of the kind of the ideology, at least that I have around reviewing these externally developed, or I guess these third-party contracts that are, I think, really, really interesting and really, really valuable, and I'm like really happy people are building them. But I think there's like a division of responsibility, where the UMA community's responsibility ends and the Jarvis team's begins. And I think Jarvis is like 100% on board with that division as well.
As far as the UMIP process goes, then Matt, do you think like the UMIP should specifically be focused on just like any sort of interaction that the financial contract has with the DVM, and like is there any reason for us to review the other pieces of functionality then?
I think that's a great point. I think like ideally these UMIPs should focus around what is this contract doing with the DVM. Also, like I saw another UMIP that came through this week, I think, that was talking about like there are certain functions that can be called by UMA voters. Like the UMA voters can put up a proposal to, like, for instance, create an to expire or shut down one of these contracts. I think that like the contract holders should talk about one, where the contract kind of requests prices from the DVM, and also any responsibility that contract creator is giving to the UMA voters. So for instance, if the UMA voters are expected to provide to create a proposal to expire a contract or to change a parameter on a contract, that should be talked about in the UMIP as well. But I think like you're 100% on point. Like the UMIP should focus around where the UMA voters and where the UMA system comes into play. I don't think that we really need to like review the entire contract. I actually think it would be helpful for like Jarvis to do, these teams. I think Jarvis has done a great job of this. They have a whole manifesto, I think they call it, and linking to like their own documentation, saying this is kind of where we've documented or where our contract's written if you want to learn more about it. But these are the parts that are relevant to the UMA system.
Yeah, some great background.
Sounds good. We're working on security checklists at the minute, and it might be worth trying to get some kind of guidance around technical contracts as well, John, about what should actually go in an UMIP and what isn't required.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And the one like highlighted thing repeatedly is just around like paying final fees to prevent spamming. But yeah, I can help to add to that part of the list too.
Excellent. Well, that's all the UMIPs for today. Is there any other issues or things that people want to discuss?
I just wanted to say congrats to you, Vari, on making like so many efficiency improvements to the UMIP process. This one was just like, man, just blasting right through it. So it's really awesome.
Cool. Thanks, John. Excellent. It was nice to see everybody, and we've managed to finish within half an hour. That's quite amazing. Excellent.
Oh, Clayton's here. Sorry, I just realized Clayton was here. Whoa, that's so weird. It's
American
daytime and Clayton's here. That's so weird. All right, anyway, sorry for
Oh, I guess I also wanted to share, you know, as we scale this up, there's like a lot of discussion internally and elsewhere, like how do we handle more and more contracts and collateral types and price identifiers coming through. So just everybody keep your minds open, thinking about like, how do we get to 500 UMIPs worth of stuff somehow making it through the pipeline every single week without, you know, all of our heads exploding. I don't think we know what all the answers are yet, so it's a really open-ended question. And Vari's been doing a lot of thinking on that, and I think everybody sort of needs to as people get more and more interested in building things on top of UMA.
And the other side of the coin, I think, is how do we have less things that require governance? How do we make our system more governance minimized? So like, should we be approving financial contracts? Should we be approving price identifiers, collateral currencies, whatever? Can we make more general price identifiers? I know Sean has like done a lot of thinking around that, so that we don't. So like, yeah. Anyway,
I guess I have a newbie question, if that's okay.
Definitely.
go for it.
Kind of along those lines of what you're saying, I was wondering if there were any like specific security parameters that we could establish, as well as like liquidity requirements that would allow us to just kind of auto approve a requested collateral type. Like if it meets X, Y, and Z, then it just automatically can go to final vote and get added to that. So it kind of reduces that lag time between requests and approval.
I think we could probably do a better job of documenting what the emerging norms are, because we sort of discuss over like a lot of these, and we have like a general idea of what is necessary for different types of collateral, but it would be great to just have that broken down. And I think like the auto approval thing is interesting because you could extend that even further where you have like optimistically proposed collateral types, and if it's not controversial, like, you know, it goes right in. There's like a lot of directions you could take it. But I think the step one really is just like, for a stable-ish coin, like a dollar coin, like here's sort of what people generally use that seems to be fine. For a wildly volatile coin, here's what we've recommended people use, or like how we've like observed this behave, and like what sort of like collateralization requirement you might want to have for your contracts. And then, yeah, documenting all of the paths to liquidity, especially for tokens that aren't actively traded. We could definitely do a lot more in that. And I think that's like a templating question too, like making it easy to write these UMIPs so you can just look at the history instead of like reading like 100 something UMIPs in a couple of weeks because we're going like almost that far. You would just have like the established norms that some UMIP historian has documented.
Yeah, like maybe some subtype templates, like you said, for like stable coins versus more volatile, and each one can have different kind of requirements for auto approval or something to that effect. But as someone new, I am right now going through the process of reading through all the old UMIPs to try and figure out what is our kind of like standard requirement for. Yeah, I'm starting just with the collateral types because that's the easiest place to start, but just trying to figure out what is kind of the expectation for the review and approval process, and if there's any way to like have a standardized set of things, that would be, I think, helpful at the very least, if not useful.
So we've tried to like document some norms a little bit just in the form of like the UMIP templates, but we've gone like back and forth on having like UMIP templates that are like too explicit, and then we get like bogged down in like kind of ridiculous UMIPs that, you know, oftentimes have unnecessary information, and then UMIP templates that are not explicit enough, so there's not enough information being conveyed. But I kind of like this idea of like just like a checklist, and it's like 5 very specific questions, and like in some cases you can just like check them off and list your source, like this has X amount of liquidity, you can get this information from here. Yeah, I don't know, just being very explicit in like the information we're requesting, but like not requiring UMIP writers to actually like put too much in there so that it's easy to review and write.
Yeah, and I think we talked about an FAQ too, where it wouldn't be relevant to everything, but you could get like most of the questions answered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. More guidance would be really useful. The trouble is as well, though, that new and weird tokens keep coming up that have, you know, untested and untried parameters.
Yeah, but in this respect, I think we just need to like learn from doing, and whenever some new aspect is like discovered, then it would be, I think, a good idea to add it to this kind of knowledge base. Just maybe it needs spending a bit time after UMIP is confirmed, just trying to crystallize what were the new piece discussed, which we haven't like encountered before, and just add it so it's not wasted time in next similar things.
Yeah, I love the idea of like a living, breathing FAQ, and like we could start that now, and then every meeting like this one where we finish early, we could like discuss, you know, the state of the FAQ and talk about like lessons learned from today's review, and like add things in, and also just allow like anybody, like any UMIP reviewer or community member, like new author, to like propose changes to the FAQ, and we just like informally kind of vote that in on this call, and just have that thing evolve with, you know, like Rainis was saying, with the lessons we're learning on this call.
I think that would be really good, and hopefully we'll have some kind of guidance together fairly soon.
So Sean, looks like you and I have a lot of documentation to write.
I don't even think it should be us though. Like it definitely shouldn't just be me and you, Chandler, right? Like I think we should just put the doc up, and then on GitHub, and then like Hexy and Rainis and Hags and everybody else that's been like thinking about this stuff and thinking about and Brittany, like been thinking about like standardized requirements. We should just like have everybody kind of, you know, propose changes on discourse, and then we can talk about those, and then like add the ones that seem correct. And
yeah, one question I had following up on that was, we should probably figure out a stat on how many price identifiers and collaterals have been approved pre-Omnibus, because I think Omnibus throws the stat a bit out of the water. But how many of those collateral types and price identifiers have been approved and actually been used? Week in, week out, we actually get a whole bunch of these UMIPs that come through, and they get passed, and then no one builds on them. So it's quite a lot of invested time into something that doesn't happen. And I think just in terms of like complementing Vari and her efficiency gains, I think that's an enormous efficiency gain where we can try and like increase that stat more. So get more dedicated teams, get UMIP proposers that are willing to go past just proposing an UMIP and actually building something.
Yeah, it would be interesting to work our way backwards from like dev mining and liquidity mining towards those numbers too. So it's like it's used for like this amount. Like there's this much TVL coming from this one. There's this much trading volume coming from this one.
That does seem like a really useful exercise.
Cool. And then just as follow up on that, it just occurred to me, but we should probably also think about doing some UMIP trimming and you know, cutting the ones that never get used, or kind of maybe doing an audit on the ones that don't have the same security considerations that have come up in recent discussions. So I think based off that FAQ, we should probably do a little bit of house cleaning and see which UMIPs don't really match up to the standard we have now.
I think an audit is absolutely necessary and becoming quite urgent, because I don't think we do have consistency from previous ones.
yeah,
But we don't really have the capacity to go back through with the volume we're getting in at the minute. But if
in some ways, like I think that's kind of I don't know. I'm kind of fond of like the inconsistencies that we have in our UMIPs because like it means that like we're constantly evolving in terms of like review and like best practice recommendations, right? So we're like learning from previous ones and then carrying that over. And then also B, it kind of highlights this thing where, you know, people like Rainis will have like super in-depth voting discussions when prices are being proposed or disputed or whatever. And like a lot of times inconsistencies in UMIPs will come up, but they're like corrected when we actually need to correct them, which is pretty cool. But it would be nice to have them just be perfect like the first time around, of course.
I do think as well we should start formally documenting when price identifiers have been used in disputes, especially if there's been any ambiguities spotted in those price identifiers, so that we resolve them consistently going forward if we don't actually change the UMIP.
Could we track the changes that we're making via a new UMIP, like to say, you know, going forward, these are the new standards that will be required in this UMIP. Like I know UMIP number 1 established the format of an UMIP. So could we have updates to UMIP number 1 that maybe like branch off of that and go forward on expectations for certain, you know, like you said, adding to securities or to the price indexes and stuff like that. It's just kind of like a newer platform update that people can refer back to say like why this change happened and what's the expectation going forward.
Yeah, I like that idea. Kind of like a change log for the FAQ.
Yeah.
We need a historian. If anybody knows a good historian, send them our way.
We need an anthropologist also. We just need a little like UMA university to study what's happening here and report back.
Cool.
Excellent. Any other comments or suggestions or things people want to discuss?
Nope. Thank you all. This was pretty fun though.
Yeah, I'm not able to attend these or hadn't been until recently. And so it's been probably 6 weeks since I've been on one. So this was pretty cool. Definitely very far and it's awesome. So I want to echo the compliment to Bari about continuing to refine this and make it smoother. So it's cool. It's exciting.
Cool.
Yeah, it's super cool to get like all the business done in the first half, and the rest of it is like discussion around you know, just getting excited about the proposals and like how we can build it up in the community. It's a really good balance and much chiller vibe than like, how do we get through all of these? Oh God.
Excellent. In that case, it was good to see you all, and I'll see you all next week.
Cheers.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
So.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.